Welcome to the sixth round of the Paris Rapid and Blitz Grand Chess Tour 2021. Uh, in this sixth round, we had a pairing between MVL, that's Vachier-Lagrave Maxime, being paired with Ian Nepomniachtchi, the Russian #1 GM and the winner of the candidates. Who will be taking on Magnus Carlsen in the World Chess Championship. MVL, he's also the French #1 grandmaster. So MVL had the white pieces, and he started with E4. Ian with the black pieces, and being in France, thought it would be more romantic uh, to despise or to try and play the French in MVL's home turf. So he played E6, which is the French defense. D4 by MVL. We have D5. E5 by MVL, which gets us to the advanced variation. We had C5, C3 by MVL. Knight C6, Knight F3. And what this does, it gets us to the Paulsen attack when you play the advanced variation. Bishop D7. We had Bishop E2. Knight G rather to E7. Knight G to E7. We had H4 by MVL. F6 must have been the first naturalist of the game. Best should have been, let's take it back. Best should have been Rook C8. And then perhaps the game would continue this way. Knight A3, C captures on D4, C captures on D4. We have Queen B6, Knight draws back to C2, F6, E captures on F6, and G recaptures on F6, and then perhaps White would castle. There it's a bit drawish. However, F6 was played just like a sideline, and this is when GM MVL Maxime played his mistake. He played H5. That, gets black into the game, and he gets advantage, about the 0.5 point advantage. Best, I think, would have been E capturing on F6. Let's see that. And then G would recapture back. D captures on C4, C5 rather. Then would have E5, Knight E3, and the game would continue this way, perhaps. Knight C2, Bishop G7. However, an innaturalist was played also by Ian. What Nepo did in his follow-up, he played Queen B6, and this is an innaturalist. Best should have been F capturing on E5. Let's take it back. F capturing on E5, and perhaps D would recapture back on E5. He didn't do that though, and he decided to play Queen B6. Then another mistake was played by MVL. He played G4. Advantage to black, and Nepo enjoyed this. Perhaps best would have been D capturing on C5, Queen capturing on that. Then we would have Bishop F4, Queen B6, Knight A3, Knight F5, G4 is now pushed. We have F capturing on E5, Knight recaptures on E5, Knight captures on E5, and then G would recapture on F5, as we have Bishop D6. F captures on E6, Bishop recaptures on E6, and the game would be almost equal. But after G4 by MVL, Nepo played Knight back to g8, knight a3 was played. We had c capturing on d4, c recaptures back on d4, f captures on e5, and d recaptures on e5, which is another inaccuracy. I think best should have been knight capturing on e5. Rather than using the pawn, you use the knight. And let's take it back. Just demonstrate that you would have a knight capturing on that, and then perhaps queen would capture on d4. We have queen capturing, knight capturing d4, bishop e3, knight captures on e2, and that way you would have the king capturing on e2, and knight e7, bishop f4, s6, rook h d1, rook c8, f3, and b5. Here the game is purely equal. It's flat 0-0. However, that wasn't played. What was played after d capturing on e5 was bishop c5. Bishop c5 is on the board. So we had knight e5. This move is intended to check at this point. He gives away this check, which Nepo did not even utilize. However, he captured e5, and here knight recaptured on e5, and then bishop captures on b5, which was a blunder in the game. Best was bishop times f2 check, and then you would have king to f1. However, that wasn't played, so we had bishop capturing on b5. Here Nepo had given away his advantage, so MVL castled the king side. We had knight f6, then bishop times b5, queen times b5, and then we had g5, which is another inaccuracy. I think best should have been h6. Just open up the file, and perhaps the game would continue this way. The game would continue like this, which is almost drawish still. However, after g6, knight e4 was played. We had queen g4, queen b6. To look at the f2 pawn, we had g6, which is another inaccuracy. I think king g2 would have been a better move. King b2 would come in handy. Then perhaps bishop would pick on f2, and the game would continue. Still, not so much of a big advantage. However, after g6, Nepo played a mistake, which is almost a blunder, and castled the queen side. Best would have been bishop d4 to attack the knight, and perhaps the game would continue by having bishop f4. That wasn't played though, so he castled the long side, and we had bishop f4 immediately by MVL. H captured on g6, and we had rook a to c1. We had g capturing on h5 to attack the queen, and queen moved to g6. At this point, Nepo is up 3 pawns, but the position is equal. It's 0-0. So he plays rook h to f8, bishop drops back to h2. Rook f6. We had queen captures on g7. Rook captured on f2, which was the blunder of the game. Best would have been capturing using the knight. Let's take it back. You would capture using the knight, and then you would have perhaps the king moving out of the way into a discovery check by the bishop and the queen battery. But that wasn't played. A blunder was played where he used the rook. And remember, this bishop is pinned, is pinned by this rook. In as much as it can continue checking, provide defense or protection to the f2 piece, whichever piece happens to be in this square, it cannot move. So if white captures on f2, black will have to recapture with the knight, and that's like a must. So what happens after capturing with f2? Rook recaptured on f2, and knight had to recapture because you've lost a piece. And it's in this position that knight capturing on f2 was a very big inaccuracy. MVL played a move and Nepo resigned. Though before we look at that, let's see what would have been much better move than knight picking on h2 would have been queen c7. You know, queen c7. From here we have queen c7. Then perhaps the game would continue this way. In as much as Nepal is up a whole rook, but it would be okay. This would, be a much better game to continue with, But in this position, knight picked on f2, and in this position, I wonder whether you can see it. MVL played a move, and Nepo resigned, and the move is knight d7. What this knight does, it's attacking the bishop and the queen. These are forked. If you dare try to check with this knight from anywhere, say on d3, a discovered check on the bishop would be picked by the rook, right? You would have the rook picking the bishop, moreover in check, and the queen will stand attack. If you dare pick the queen, then you lose a queen. If you pick with the knight, you still lose the queen. If you do a double check, say we are saying, let's see, if you double check from here, what would happen is the king moves out of the way, and you cannot pick this b2 pawn because this queen cannot pick the b2 pawn. Reason being, it's this pawn is still being protected by the queen now, since the knight moved out of the way. So I mean, let's try all these possibilities. If you pick this knight like this, then you run into this check. You have to go back. It's a first move. Then this is check. You cannot play here. That would be a mate, right? Let's take it back. And when you pick this, you would have this check. You have to play that check. You keep moving. There, this is dangerous because you can't do much here. You'll simply just lose everything, and you cannot do much. It's almost a mate. Let's go through the other variation. If you dare play at this point, if you dare play here at this point, if you try to play with a knight into a check, you run into this check, and if you pick this, the queen falls. You have to pick, and you'll then be mated. Let's look at another variation where we have a double check. Let's see from this position. What if black plays this? I double check. The king moves up, and at this point, you have to choose. You can either pick here and we go back to the same thing, or it's the only move basically. You have to pick that. That way we run into that, and this is even more lethal. We'll go back to the same, that's a mate. And if so you pick this, we'll go back to the same variation. So at this point the game was lost, and on move 26, knight d7 played by MVL, and Nepo resigned. He just showed sometimes if you go way off in the French, you can be obliterated, and MVL just showed that. Good game this was. Thank you for watching this, and please subscribe to my channel just so you can be able to watch the other remaining games. We have 3 more rounds to go in the rapid category. So let's see. And this was a very interesting game for this particular round 6. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to the next video.